I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker of the day, MK Palmore. Now, MK has had a distinguished career. He started in the Navy, went on to the Marine Corps. He was also a special agent in the FBI for, get this, 22 years, long and storied career, where he finished off leading the investigative teams in the San Francisco office. He's also the author of the book, Leadership for Youngsters, and he is currently the VP Field Chief Security Officer at Palo Alto Networks. So MK, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate the introduction. And let me take 30 seconds to, again, thank the team at SANS for including me in this, what I think, very important topic, and also really a confluence of a lot of the things that get me up and moving in the morning. My love for cybersecurity, my interest in where the cybersecurity industry is headed, which is sort of the nature of the talk that I intend to give here in a second, but also this issue of inclusion and diversity within cybersecurity and the wider technology fields. I think that based on the confluence of issues that have happened both socially and otherwise in the past year, that there's probably no more relevant topic than how it is that we go about increasing the presence of women and minorities in the field of cybersecurity. And again, because of where we are in terms of development of technology, I can't think again of a more important topic. And again, the folks at SANS, the place where I received quite a bit of my technical training as it relates to cybersecurity. Appreciate the opportunity again to engage here and talk about this. All right, let's go to slide advance. Great. So the topic I have teed up to help set the stage for this forum is really around the subject of the prevalence and growing need and reliance on cloud and cloud security, and the development of this concept called SASE, the Secure Access Service Edge. And what I call the future of cybersecurity really is the here and now in an area where if you are breaking into the cybersecurity industry, if you are new to the industry, if you have any interest at all in flourishing in this industry, cloud security and the concept of SASE is where you need to be. So Frank kind of gave some high-level details. I'm a current cybersecurity strategic advisor with Palo Alto Networks. I've enjoyed my short term with Palo Alto, a little over 18 months. Prior to that, I spent a career in the FBI, leading cybersecurity investigative teams in my last stint as an executive at FBI San Francisco. And of course, doing all those other things in the course of a 22-year career with the Bureau. Prior to that, I was a commissioned officer in the United States Marine Corps and a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. So a very long government-focused career. And in many points during that career, as I highlighted in a diversity talk that I gave just this morning to another organization, I've seen and realized that what we are viewing in terms of the organizations that I've been a part of is finally a discussion around this issue of how is it that we give other folks an opportunity to have a place at the table, really to participate in what is the ongoing technology issue of the day, and that is how do we secure our technology. So a couple of imperatives as I'll outline them as I go through this deck and sort of again setting the stage on this topic of cloud security and SASE. There are a couple of imperatives that are impacting the cybersecurity realm and will continue to do so in the coming months and years. They are cloud, again, all things cloud, cloud security, developing our understanding of the cloud environment, how we secure and scale to the needs of our organization. Issues related to automation. We need to leverage much more the capabilities of automation, both in AI, ML, and then products like SOAR, and the concept of zero trust. In other words, removing trust from the security environment and really getting into segmentation and delivering the ability to have visibility for security practitioners throughout layer 3 through layer 7 activities within the environment. Today's global enterprises, I can tell you, I spend my days and time contacting and interacting with customers from Palo Alto Networks vantage point. Everyone is talking about the need to leverage the cloud because of lots of different reasons, not the least of which are the agility, the ability to scale to the growing challenges, but how is it again that we provide and are able to scale security as it relates to this? And again, the topic of SASE or the Secure Access Service Edge is really where there's a convergence of lots of technology issues, bringing us to a point, again, where we need to be thinking about security very differently. Lots of drivers on the stage, or the landscape and environment. Issues like data connectivity, or the prevalence of data, issues around connectivity. We've seen figures in the neighborhood of 42 billion devices expected to be connected to the internet by 2025. And of course, the prevalence of cloud and its ability to meet the organizational and operational needs of an organization. And then here we come with the cybersecurity apparatus running to try and catch up with business operations. How is it that we scale security to the needs of the organization while meeting, again, the needs of operability, but scaling as the organization grows? So the paradigm that we have to shift from is an old paradigm that really many of us who joined the security field within the past 2 decades understand. There's a shifting mindset and paradigm. We started off with sort of this old mentality of the castle and moat, right? This idea that you could secure information behind a wall, on-premise servers, place where you could literally put your hands on it and virtually wrap security around the activities, control access in and out. We thought we were safe, but guess what? Technology's always moving faster than we can build security around it. And what has evolved today is the interconnectivity, the need to evolve with the scale and needs of the enterprise. And this is where issues of connectivity in the cloud come in, again, touching on issues related to SASE. We have to examine what the current threat landscape looks like as we talk about what the future of security is and what it looks like. Constant reports come out. I only iterate them, quite frankly, because we hear the same story year after year after year about the prevalence of adversarial attacks, attacking, quite frankly, known vulnerabilities in environment, and still a lack of adherence to the cybersecurity fundamentals. Well, guess what? We've taken those same missteps into the cloud. We've taken those same misconfigurations, this inability, again, to appropriately protect our environments into cloud environments. And the numbers and figures bear this out in terms of where you see the prevalence of attacks, the successful attacks that are carried out year in and year out. The industry's impacted, change from year to year, but typically you get your top 3: public sector, healthcare, and financial services. It was interesting to note during the course of last year when the folks at Verizon did their study on the landscape. Again, there are lots of other studies out there. I rely heavily on the Verizon study and some of the other information out there because it does a pretty comprehensive look at challenges in the environment. We saw interest or emphasis on manufacturing for the first time, sort of jumping into that top 3 in terms of successful attacks. This is an indication, again, of where technology is so far ahead in terms of pacing from the ability of the security apparatus to get their hands wrapped around all the challenges within the business environment. We see issues like OT rising in terms of priority for manufacturers, but we also continue to see, again, within public sector, healthcare, and financial services, those typical issues tackling or presented to the security apparatus of the team. And as you see highlighted here on this particular screen, as it relates to the CIS 20 critical security controls, the ongoing need, again, to pay attention to the fundamentals. Those issues where you think might be part of the normal security apparatus are still getting missed. Issues like continuous vulnerability management, a key issue which pops up consistently as we talk about issues like ransomware or other prevalent vectors that attackers are using to become successful in their attacks. Cloud security is rather unique. Again, it is where nearly the entire industry from business enterprises are headed. I like the slide that Frank and Dennis showed at the beginning of this, showing where organizations are leaning. And what we saw both anecdotally and in terms of numbers last year is that organizations are moving to the cloud at a much faster rate than what they had planned, and the reliance on cloud continues to grow exponentially as organizations realize they need the flexibility, the scalability, the elasticity of the cloud in order to meet business and operational needs. Well, guess what? Again, information tells us, review tells us that we're making very similar mistakes in terms of cloud protections that we've made historically. Some of the highlights from a report done by the Palo Alto Networks Unit 42, which is a threat intelligence research team, our world-renowned team that is a part of the Palo Alto Networks family, their review showed easily issues like misconfigurations in the cloud, poor identity hygiene and identity management among cloud environments. They were overly permissive, access to keys being open and available widely, and of course, the simple things like a lack of use of multi-factor authentication and prevalent issues like cryptojacking impacting business enterprises and the ability for businesses, again, to scale their cybersecurity needs to meet the challenges of the future. I recently collaborated with a colleague of mine at Palo Alto Networks to identify what we thought to be some themes or issues. We call them predictions, but I don't like to use the term predictions because quite frankly, those of us in the security field are woefully inadequate when it comes to predicting what the future looks like. But we do year after year get a sense of what themes in the environment will continue to impact us. You see on the screen these 10 issues as they were presented or have been presented in webinar formats and what we came up with. But what you don't see is the underlying theme in all of this really has been the change to the reliance on cloud as the go-to method for business operations and data. And of course, again, the convergence of these issues related to SASE. I keep mentioning SASE. I get lots of questions about what is it? What does it mean? And it is simply the convergence of lots of technology issues that have been floating around for security practitioners for many, many years. They've reached a high hum because the issue of secure remote access, again, because of last year, because of where we're headed as a society, found itself really prioritized at the top of the list for most business organizations. We all got pushed remote. We're meeting remote in this environment. If the pandemic of 2020 had not happened, in all likelihood, this would have been a face-to-face conference that we would have traveled to. But now we are learning to rely on our technology foundations and this issue of secure remote access in order to maintain business operations, maintain contact and collaborations within our teams and stakeholders within our organizations. And quite frankly, we're all doing business remotely as well. So you see these issues, again, lots of individual service providers out there tackling these issues like SD-WAN, WAN optimization, cloud secure web gateways, zero trust networks, and offering virtual firewall or firewalls as a service. Really, the folks at Gartner term this as a market convergence on these ideas that is being pushed and driven by the needs of the business in current day, again, emanating in this term that we call SASE. Oftentimes, because of my background with the FBI, I always like to refocus our efforts. Why are we here? We're security practitioners first, right? We understand that we have a job to do. My job with Palo Alto Networks is to enable organizations to provide security in a way that enables the business and also helps them solve their challenges as it relates to enterprise risk. We always have to understand that the adversary, the folks out there on the other end of the keyboard, they have a job to do as well. A lot of it has to do with how it is that they make a living, but what we do to interdict their activities really has not changed significantly over the years. And what it boils down to is the concept of interdicting them during any one point during the cyber kill chain. Cyber kill chain is a bit of an old term, but it's still relevant. We see time and time again, when you look at adversarial behavior, that these folks go through these steps every time as they go through the process, even asymmetrically. And we can talk at length about how the APT threat has been coming from an asymmetric lens. They still go through these steps. They still do significant reconnaissance. They still look for the best way to weaponize their malicious script. And the delivery is what's needed ultimately to get the job done. And if you have the ability through tools, services, partner organizations, or a platform approach to security, you can interdict them. You can stop them at any one point during this kill chain, cutting them off at the knees. The issue of this being a lifetime worth of work to them. I do lots of presentations on the cyber threat landscape, and I always like to bring it home back to the issue of, again, these folks make a living from this. I just had to update this slide last night because issues, as you see on the bottom of the screen, related to Bitcoin, which is the digital currency of choice for use in ransomware events, has gone from, I will say, if I take it from August of last year, delivering the same type of presentation, observations, Bitcoin at the time was, I think, trading for somewhere around $11,000. So just since the end of August till now, we see a value as of yesterday of $50,000. These folks make a living from this. This is their job. They get up every morning, just like you do, with the idea in mind: how do I take advantage of the unsuspecting enterprise? How do I go for the low-hanging fruit in terms of vulnerabilities that are available for me to exploit? How do I deliver this, make a living off of it? And again, they're experts at return on investment. How do I do this by high volume? Again, it's their job. This is what they do when they get up in the morning. The cyber adversary is not your average criminal. Here's a part of the mistake I think that folks make in terms of what are continual themes I think that people have about criminality and the criminal mindset. They approach this again as a job. They have high technical capabilities and an ability to rationalize and tackle problems in a way very similar to what the skills that you bring to the table. In other words, as it's been said time and time again, there's probably a pretty fine line between those of us within the technical realm and those who are on the other side of the keyboards conducting this activity in an adversarial vantage point. They're experts at return on investment, as I stated before, which means that, again, they work by volume with the goal in mind. To be successful at any one point is a success for them. And so as they go about, say, tackling 10 potential victims, even if one of those victims comes through for them, they've achieved success in their realm. And so the old adage still applies. We have to be right every time. They only have to be successful one time. I want to touch base very quickly on the nation state adversary. They're getting a lot of attention. It was teed up at the beginning of this presentation about the impact of SolarWinds. I don't think that we're in the near term going to understand the full impact of that breach, but here's what I want to highlight to you. They have a lot of time on their hands, and their approach, again, understanding that we are now challenged as we move to the cloud with this idea of how do we protect the cloud and all of its various forms. Most organizations have a multi-cloud strategy when they're thinking about deploying to the cloud in order to leverage its uses and capabilities, and again, the elasticity and scalability of it. How do you protect all of that? Well, guess what? Nation state adversaries understand that those are problems for you and will tend to view and look for opportunities to exploit your vulnerabilities in this realm, because this is their job. It's a shift, of course, from paradigm. These folks get up every day, put on a uniform in some cases, go sit in a computer. They conduct intelligence, they conduct reconnaissance. They look at problems differently than how we might think about them. And the SolarWinds breach and attack on the supply chain is a fine example of exactly how they go about, again, figuring out how to deliver heavy impact on a wide number of victimizations or victimized entities, individuals, or business enterprises. They're fully engaged. So drivers for the future state of cybersecurity. I mentioned in the tee-up cloud, automation, and the concept of zero trust. How do I arrive at these three? This whole thing is about cloud and the issues of increasing diversity in the field of cybersecurity. One of the recommendations I make to anyone looking to get into this field is that once you've got the basics, once you've got the fundamentals, if there's an area that you think you might want to key in on, cloud is a great choice, because this is where the industry's headed. Again, the data from last year fully supports that. I think we'll continue to see, again, this wide adoption and movement to the cloud. But of course, again, there are challenges with it. Challenges that we don't quite approach in the same way that we may approach our on-prem environments. And it requires us to look at security differently. We have to be able to scale. We have to be able to meet the needs of the organization and protect the digital assets as the movement to the cloud becomes more prevalent. Automation. Lots of different thought processes around automation. Lots of folks out there who are not quite, haven't quite bought in on the idea that automation is fully baked, that it has the capabilities to leverage and serve your organization in a way that's substantive and impactful to your security apparatus. The first bullet point you see up there, workforce challenges. If you are paying attention, again, and hopefully you are, if you're attending this particular forum, part of the reason that we need to widen the optic and lens around including or increasing women and underrepresented minorities in cybersecurity is we can't meet the needs of the workforce challenges. There is no organization on the planet that can identify and hire enough talent quickly enough to meet the needs within their cybersecurity environment. It's my postulation that automation can help close some of that gap. Not all of it, of course, but it can help close some of it. We have use cases within our own organization and others that we deal with where the heavy use and leverage of automation has allowed us to scale down our security operations environment. Relying heavily on automation within security operations actually means you don't have to go out and hire manpower to meet certain security needs. Doesn't mean that you can get away without hiring people. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I am suggesting is that once you get this high caliber talent in your organization, you don't want them spending the majority of their time on rudimentary security related work when there's a way through playbooks, and in other words, SOAR products or automation to get much of that work done so that by the time it gets in front of the human, there's a high fidelity, high focused way of dealing with alerts and information within the security environment. We've got to begin leveraging much more of automation. You hear concepts like shift left, bake security into the process. Certainly our folks who are in the DevOps cycles are looking for opportunities to help them with this process of baking security in. Automation is part of that. You need to have processes that allow the developers in that shift left environment to test their builds, be able to know securely and with some assurance that what it is that they're building will be deployed in a secure manner and won't open the organization up to challenges for which, one, because of a lack of visibility, you won't see, or two, have significant impact on the environment. The complexity of today's digital environment. Hopefully I'm driving this home enough with you guys. It's changing so rapidly that security has to automate in order to meet the needs of it. And again, the confluence of these ideas, they're all intertwined with one another. You don't talk cloud security without talking automation. I don't think you talk automation and wider security without touching base on the third issue of zero trust. Now, this issue or the topic of zero trust has been around for a number of years. Interestingly enough, one of my colleagues at Palo Alto Networks is really the guy that coined the phrase around this and developed the initial research at Forrester around the topic of zero trust. It's more than a buzzword now. Not only have organizations successfully undertaken their zero trust journey, and it is a journey, it's not a destination, they have been able to replicate this ability, heighten hyper micro segmentation, really understanding from a visibility standpoint what's happening between layer 3 and layer 7 throughout an organization, and allowing themselves the ability to access and provide controls and wrap security around the widening and growing complexity of their environment. I call it a journey, vice a destination, because many large-scale organizations, big global ones, get intimidated by the term zero trust. I've heard many a security practitioner say it's not achievable, it's just an industry buzzword. But again, I've seen time and again organizations that take the time to invest in this journey, and again, start in a way that allows you to scale out what you learn from the zero trust journey and build it out to a point where at the very least you have the crown jewels and other important aspects of your data protected under a zero trust architecture. Your platform, your ability to provide security can grow again with the scale of the organization. So why move in this direction? Why SASE? What are the benefits? Well, again, because of the growing and rapidly changing environment, you need flexibility in terms of security architecture. This is where the SASE convergence comes in. This is where the framework of SASE makes you begin to think about looking at this in terms of potentially a single vendor or a limited number of vendors that can provide the tools and services you need to meet the growing needs of the organization. And so this flexibility, this agility becomes important. Believe it or not, at the end of the day, there's cost savings involved in this. I don't know any organization that's not counting their pennies as it relates to security. There are very few out there in the landscape, maybe some of the large scale financial organizations that have the kind of deep pockets that you need to I hesitate using this term, but throw money at security. But most organizations still continue to look at security with a very defined and in some cases limited budget. And so you need to be thinking strategically. There's nothing more disheartening than talking to security practitioners who are only interested in solving a singular, very small issue within their environment and lack the ability to think strategically. Where's your organization going to be 18 months from now, 2 years from now? How are you going to scale out and build security so that you can meet the growing challenges on the threat landscape? This is where TCO comes in, but also smart decisions in terms of how it is that you apply this to your environment. Reduction in complexity. I can't tell you again, security practitioners, all of you online here, I'm sure will attest to, there's nothing more challenging than the complexity of the growing security environment. Information is everywhere. Users, your stakeholders, both the internal and external are everywhere, and they require secure access to this information at nearly all times from a variety of locations around the globe. This is where the elasticity and resilience of cloud comes in, and why organizations are moving in this direction. The attempts to reduce that complexity, again, become hyper prioritized for most organizations, and you can get there, again, with the appropriate frameworks and understanding how it is that you provide threat prevention throughout the entirety of the organization as your needs expand and contract based on what's happening in the environment. So enterprises, consumers, best practices, this stuff's not a surprise for any of you, really, but it bears reiteration because, again, as we see time and time again, it's not high-level stuff that's getting organizations in trouble. At the end of the day, it's the cybersecurity fundamentals. They're still important. The ability to identify tools and services which increase the visibility of security practitioners is paramount. If you can't see it, you can't react to it. If you can't see it, you can't plan for it. If you can't see it, you may not even know that it's impacted you until it's too late. Time to discovery in most breaches and attacks is still in excess of 180 days. We all know, even just from recent news, all that you can gather in a 180-day period, it becomes paramount. Get to the basics. Shift left, I talked about it. Developing and baking security into the development process so that you can, in a relatively secure fashion, engage in continuous integration and continuous delivery of developer tools and products. We got to shift left. We got to bake security into that process. And of course, I've mentioned more than once here the use of automation and machine learning. We got to think differently about security, and we have to drive others to think differently. And this group is just as equipped as everyone else to do that. I'm a big fan of cyber intelligence. Ingestion of threat intelligence is important. I used to tell folks all the time during my time in the Bureau, no one entity sees the entire threat landscape. Because of that, you need to be sure that you're investing in relevant threat streams that increase your visibility on the overall landscape. A lot of this starts, of course, from your ability to look outside into your own organization, but you want to know what's going on with other organizations as well, both in your sector and in other sectors, because believe me, if the vulnerability exists within your environment, the chances are the adversary will look to exploit that vulnerability at some point. So threat intelligence continues to be vital. Let's talk about for about 30 seconds, the all-important consumer. At the end of the day, these are folks continually impacted by cybersecurity attacks. Most consumers don't even realize it, but they have been relying on the cloud for a number of months and years now. Nearly everything in the way of the iPhone, the iPad, Android systems, whatever, are relying on SaaS applications in the cloud for storage of digital information. I saw an interesting note. Again, observations of the marketplace yesterday that indicated that the Chrome OS had moved into second place as the second most utilized operating system, again, behind Microsoft, which continues to lead in that category. But it's interesting because its growth and its reliance on cloud, as we all know, is an indication of where the future is. Folks are getting away from this idea of storing information on these devices. Storage space comes at a premium. And who doesn't want to, again, leverage the capabilities of the cloud and access to information? But consumers are still failing at even the basics. use of multi-factor authentication, presence of backup solutions, endpoint security. I know that there's someone on the line right now who say endpoint security is working its way out of our vernacular. It is not. It's still the last point of defense for the consumer. It's still the last point of defense in large-scale enterprises. So while you're developing that cloud security strategy, make sure you have a concurrent endpoint strategy that supports your overall business needs. And of course, we're seeing, again, prevalence of mobile device or use of mobile devices and accessing business information. And so provision devices are great, but what are consumers doing about the devices that they buy and purchase on their own? They're accessing business information, and we need to make security easier for them. Secure remote access, I'll end with this issue, for consumers especially, continues to be an issue. There was a point brought up on an earlier slide that I did not highlight about the issue of work from home or remote work. The high flex model that we are transitioning to, or this hybrid model of working from home and potentially going back into workspaces, I think will continue to gain steam, and we will see the vast majority of high-tech jobs being done from remote locations. And so the ability to securely access digital information, digital assets will become preeminent in security environments. I touched on quite a few issues. Again, I started this thinking or talking about what is the future of cybersecurity, but again, it really is the now of cybersecurity. Cloud's already here. We're already leaning in as a society, as business organizers, as entrepreneurs. We're leaning into cloud in a way that we had not done previously. The subject matter of this forum could not be more relevant to the time. And again, this issue of if you're coming from an underrepresented minority community, you need to be looking at cloud in terms of doubling down on your skill development and learning. I can't imagine really a better place to invest in. This last point on this slide from a warrior standpoint really is about understanding that the enemy, the adversary, is coming. Don't assume that they are not, or that they are not interested in your digital platform or your digital information. They're going to do their part, which is take advantage of vulnerabilities and exploits within your system. You need to do your job, which is expecting them to come, planning for their attempts, and doing everything under the sun that you can in a smart, focused, and risk-based way, creating obstacles for them to gain access, because again, they're experts at return on investment. They're going to go to the easy mark. They will continue to do that. Hey, thanks again to the folks at SANS for giving me the opportunity to tee up and level up this conversation that you're going to have today. Cloud security, SASE, these issues around increasing the presence of minorities in the cyber threat market space is important. It's a passion topic of mine, and I'm happy to see organizations like SANS really weigh in and make an effort to make a change in this environment. Thanks again.